Hello everyone, so in this video we'll be talking about the NI function. We'll be returning to the NI function, meaning also that this video is really equally relevant to INFJs and INTJs primarily, also relevant to strong NI users in general, but also relevant to anyone interested in the NI function, understanding how INFJs work, how INTJs work, and so forth. Now, the reason why INFJs and INTJs are the primary subjects here is that there is something quite significant existentially about having NI as a dominant function. Just in the same way that there's something significant existentially about having FE as a dominant function or TE as a dominant function. So if you're an ENFJ or an ENTJ, you may have strong NI, but there's going to be a world of difference between how you experience the world versus how an INFJ or an INTJ experience the world. That is to say that the dominant function gives a world. There's a certain way in which you organize experience, a certain way in which you come into contact with the world and you navigate the world that is really colored and conditioned and regulated by the dominant function. The dominant function is the backdrop of your world experience. Okay, the dominant function is the backdrop of your world experience. In the case of INFJs and INTJs, the dominant backdrop is NI, introverted intuition. And the way that I would describe NI in terms of how it shapes our world, the world of NI dominance, is that it shapes an oceanic experience. An oceanic experience. And it's very important for you to understand this because it can explain so much about the potentialities, the difficulties, the challenges that NI dominants experience in the course of their lives. You have to imagine that the way of experiencing the world for an NI dominant is oceanic in the sense that it kind of works as like a system of flows. It feels like you're floating through different experiences that don't ever sort of begin in a discrete way and end in another discrete way to kind of give the conditions for the emergence of another discrete event. The way that we organize experience, the way that we connect the external world and our mind, including our thinking, is really kind of wavy. There's a certain sense of it being submerged. Again, never clear beginnings, never clear ends. We're most comfortable when we feel like we are floating and when our flow is not interrupted. And we tend to have a certain lack of comfort, a certain unease when it comes to the rigid sort of sculpting of experience into blocks, okay? So you can sort of summarize this by saying the oceanic experience of NI dominance, the way in which experience is organized, is really quite different from the way the world is, particularly the world today is. Both in physical terms, in logistical terms, in social terms, and in intellectual terms. There is a clear dominance nowadays to partitioning the world, compartmentalizing the world, having different discrete blocks connected to each other in this like a huge grid work of parts that you could just take out, put back, cause and effect. It's like, in a way it's the opposite of oceanic, right? So oceanic would be the NI filter of experience, right? And I think to describe the world, hopefully this is not too technical a term, but the best term that I could think of is regimented. Regimented, there's an organization to it according to principles that are rigid enough, like kind of straight hard lines, not the waves of the oceanic experience of NI dominance. And so in this sense, one of the core challenges for an NI dominant is how to find the area of overlap between the NI world and its coloring of experience in general and the way the world is, externally speaking, how to find areas of overlap in order to, in order to thrive. In order to thrive, because like I've always been saying, in a sense, the core challenge for NI dominance is to try to connect the two worlds in order to flourish as someone who is always across the two worlds, as someone who is seeking to bridge the two worlds, who doesn't want to be lost in the world of external things, repress NI, like a compliant INFJ, for example, because I speak primarily from the INFJ experience, but I'm sure there is the equivalent in INTJs, but not also completely just divorce oneself from that external world to favor the womb-like environment of the NI bubble, like the solipsistic INFJ does. And I think that from this perspective, a key notion that I want to introduce, I want to discuss it more in future videos, and I will be exploring it certainly when it comes to, when the time comes for me to start writing my next book, which probably will be a book purely focused on understanding and excavating the NI function and introvert intuition. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be really stimulating. I want to introduce this notion of the interstice. And I think the notion of the interstice is very useful precisely because it's not just a theoretical postulate. We can find practical use in this notion when we think about it and when we think of ourselves acting in the world as informed by this idea of the interstice. And the way in which I understand the interstice is precisely those points of connection across the day, across the week, between the oceanic backdrop of the NI world and the regimented backdrop of the external world. That is to say that these two modes of organized experience are very different. They're hard to combine. They often lead NI dominance to sacrifice one in favor of the other, like I just described earlier in the relationship to compliance and solipsism. In one case, regimented experience is favored. In another, oceanic experience is favored. The idea is that, and that's one way of understanding the spiritualized path of experience, is to understand that there's also a way of mastering a kind of technique where you become so perceptive. It's mastering your perceptive ability to distinguish those moments across your day in the regimented world, which is imposed on you and there's no escape, where there is a connection, there, like, an interstice opens where you can action something from the perspective, from the behavioral perspective of the oceanic experience, remaining true to yourself, while still having an impact on the external world of regimented things and people. And finding those interstices, this is also something I was sketching and trying to drive towards when I'm talking about the islands of spirit in the Infinite Soul, my latest book. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Where can we find these interstices, and how can we get better practiced at it? I think that if you can sort of locate one or two or three across the day and do something significant, that can massively contribute to improving your self-esteem and your feeling that you're building towards something concrete. So I was talking about two books. Those two books are my latest, they're my books on the INFJ. If you want to know more, guys, the Ecstatic Soul, a new look at the INFJ personality, and the Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World. If you want to know more about INFJs, you should get these two books. This one is more focused on the INFJ mind, INFJ consciousness, and the Infinite Soul is more focused on how to lead a life as an INFJ that is authentic in this world right here, right now, more concrete guide to INFJ life, happiness, and flourishing. And as usual, guys, don't forget my Patreon page is the live on my channel. The link is right below. Please support me. You get access to bonus content, to me and the community. I'd be so grateful. See you soon.